I'm at Midakey to see if I can get my the rattling in the chief fixed. Seems like it's in the exhaust manifold, and there are a couple of bolts that are loose. They might be able to realign it and just stick the bolts in and new bolts in and tighten it up. We'll see. I've got some exhaust gaskets, but they seem to think it'll be pretty expensive to peel it, to peel it off and stick them in there. This is downtown Florence. I decided to wait on getting the, apparently some bolts were missing. I decided to wait on the exhaust. See if I can find someone else who could do it for a little bit cheaper. This is the W.C. Handy Home and Museum, as you can read. He's very famous in terms of blues. One of the first musicians to head up to Memphis and write blues music up there. This is the cabin he grew up in.
Excuse me,
Oh, no worries. A little bit about the museum and about Handy himself.
Well, yeah. Did you want to do a tour or you just doing a...
Either way, whatever. Even if you want to just tell me a little bit right now, that would be fine.
Oh, okay. I'll turn this down a little bit.
You know what, Ron? I have to say, even if Mitt Romney ekes it out.
Oh, am I going to be on that? Well, W.C. Handy, this is, welcome W.C. Home of W.C. Handy.
Thank you.
Music Museum. And W.C. Handy was born right here in Florence, Alabama, 1873. And his father and his grandfather were Methodist preachers. So from the time W.C. Handy was born, they started planning for him to follow in their footsteps.
Right.
However, W.C. Handy wanted to be a musician. His father disapproved. He called that the devil's music. But he did allow W.C. to have organ lessons. And of course, through school, W.C. hadn't had a teacher, that taught music for 30 minutes every morning before he started his classes. And so that this was some of W.C. Handy's influence. Of course, the church, was his influence also, church music. And as time went on, he learned a lot about music his folks didn't know about. The bands that come to town, he'd slip off and go play with the band. And by the time they found out about it, well, he's getting to be a big teenage boy, so they stopped fussing him so much about that blues music.
Right.
But he did go on to be self-taught on the piano, trumpet, guitar, cornet. And so from the experience that he had, he had gained the ability to learn to play practically any instrument he took an interest in. And so, how much did you want me to tell you?
So then what happens? He became a blues legend from there somehow.
Yes, he went on to where he started off taking a teacher's test.
Mm-hmm.
But after he took that test, he found that teachers didn't make very much money.
Mm.
So he ended up working at a factory in Bessemer, Alabama. And in the meantime, he organized a jazz quartet. Well, he and his little quartet ended up having to work their way to Chicago to the World's Fair.
Oh, wow.
And they got to the World's Fair and found the fair had been closed. So they went on to St. Louis. And in St. Louis, he couldn't find work. So for a while there, he was homeless, sleeping on the riverbank. And he said he remembered all the things his father had warned him about as far as being a blues musician was concerned. However, he decided that he would just stay and tough it out. So he came upon a group playing at a saloon. They let him play. And afterwards, the crowd took a collection for him, and he had enough money for a new set of clothes and ticket out to St. Louis.
Oh, right.
So he went on and travel with the Mahara Minstrels. And during his travels, he met the lady that he eventually married, Elizabeth. Her name was Elizabeth. She was from Henderson, Kentucky. And from there, after he was married, and they came back to Florence for a while, then he took his little family on to Memphis. And Memphis is where he earns the name for all those blues. He had written a campaign song for a man that was running for mayor, and everybody loved the campaign song, so after the campaign was over, he was encouraged to have that song recorded. So he changed the name of that campaign song to the Memphis Blues and had it recorded.
Oh, wow.
So he wrote and recorded the first song called The Blues.
And what year was that?
I have to look at
Around
the wall
in the 30s?
This was earlier than the 30s. This would have been about early 1900s.
Oh, okay.
Because by the time 1919 came along, he had already moved to New York. So I would say
1906. Yeah, okay.
Around there. And of course from there, after he'd written that Memphis Blues, he went on to write some more music, and eventually ended up writing the St. Louis Blues. And of course, after he wrote St. Louis Blues, of course that turned out to be his most famous song.
Right.
And after which he and his brother decided to open their own publishing company, and they moved their company to New York. And of course, New York is where the Handy family settled.
Right.
And of course, his career just shot off from there. You know, he became quite well known all over the country. And of course, as the years rolled by, he was involved in just numerous things. By the time he was 60, his wife took sick and passed away. By the time he was 70, he lost his eyesight. So he studied well so he could continue composing. And by the time he was 80, he decided to remarry. He married his secretary. She had worked with him 13 or 14 years, and he called her his eyes. And then Debussy lived to be 85 years old. He died in New York, March 28, 1958. He didn't belong to Debussy Handy.
It's called an organ chime.
Or shaker chime.
Do you know how to play it?
Oh, no. I'll let you see what it sounds like. And then that has some information out there. You can get it.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Get it.
There you go. Pause if you want to read it.
It was not originally located on this site. The cabin was torn down, the logs were numbered and stored for a while. Then in 1969, the logs were brought to this site and the cabin was rebuilt.
And where was the cabin originally, where he was born?
The cabin was originally located on the corner of Cherokee and Bill Street. Of course, at the time the cabin was there was no Bill Street.
Right.
But there's a historical marker that will, let you know where the cabin was located. And so this is